Captain Vex-Nine of the Galactic Council's Emergency Response Division thought he'd seen everything in his 47 cycles of service. Pirates, raiders, cosmic anomalies that could swallow entire star systems. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared him for the day a desperate alien species made the most catastrophic mistake in galactic history. They called for help from Earth. "Sir, we're receiving another distress beacon from the Outer Rim," Communications Officer Tal announced, her voice carrying the weary tone of someone who'd processed 16 similar calls that morning. "It's from the Korthak Empire." Vex-Nine's 4 eyes rolled in perfect synchronization. The Korthak Empire. Those pompous, self-proclaimed masters of 17 star systems who considered themselves the apex of civilization. Their technology was impressive, sure, but their arrogance, that was legendary. "Hey, let me guess," Vex-Nine muttered, settling his bulky frame into the command chair. "Another border skirmish with the hegemony? Or perhaps their mining operations hit another unstable asteroid field?" Tala's expression shifted from tired to genuinely concerned. "No, sir. They're reporting a full-scale invasion, a known species. They're being systematically destroyed, system by system." The bridge fell silent. Full-scale invasions were rare in this sector. Most conflicts were territorial disputes or resource wars that lasted a few rotations before diplomatic pressure forced a resolution. But systematic destruction, that was different. That was terrifying. "Play the message," Vex-Nine ordered, his casual demeanor evaporating. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing High Commander Zorth of the Korthak Empire. The usually pristine figure looked haggard, his ceremonial armor cracked and smoking. Behind him, explosions lit up what appeared to be the interior of a damaged command ship. "This is High Commander Zorth of the Korthak Imperial Fleet," the message began, static crackling through his words. "We are under attack by an unknown species. They appeared without warning 3 solar days ago. Controlling not bind. Melee. Our fleets are being decimated. They show no interest in negotiation, no response to surrender offers. They simply attack and consume everything in their path." The image shook as another explosion rocked the ship. "Nation, this behalf." Zorth steadied himself against a console, his breathing labored. "We have lost 14 systems in 3 days. Our military forces are down to 30% capacity. These creatures are unlike anything in our databases. They adapt to our weapons in real time. What destroys them once becomes useless within hours. We need immediate assistance from any Galactic Council member willing to respond." Vex-Nine leaned forward. The Korthak Empire had one of the most advanced militaries in known space, if they were being overwhelmed this quickly. "There's more, sir," Tala said quietly. The message continued. Zorth's expression grew even more desperate. "We have tried contacting every major power in our sector. The hegemony refuses to respond, claiming it's a Korthak problem. The Trade Federation has sealed their borders. The Crystal Alliance." He paused, his voice breaking slightly. "The Crystal Alliance no longer exists. These invaders consumed their entire territory in 18 hours. Vex-Nine felt his blood chill. The Crystal Alliance controlled over 30 systems and maintained a fleet of 2,000 war vessels. 18 hours. "We are transmitting our coordinates and all tactical data we have gathered," Zorth continued. "If anyone at all, can provide assistance, we will offer whatever compensation you require. Technology, resources, territory, we are prepared to negotiate anything." The message ended abruptly, replaced by streams of tactical data and star charts. The bridge crew stared in stunned silence as the scope of the invasion became clear. The unknown enemy wasn't just attacking random targets, they were following a precise pattern, consuming entire civilizations and using their resources to fuel further expansion. "Sir," Navigation Officer Kelt spoke up nervously, "according to these projections, if they maintain their current expansion rate, they'll reach Council space in 17 days. Vex-Nine finished grimly. "Prep a response fleet." "Emergency Protocol 7, sir," Tala interrupted. "There's something else." Zorth wasn't just broadcasting to council members. This was a general distress call. Open frequency to every known species in the galaxy. Vex-Nine's expression darkened. Desperate times called for desperate measures, but broadcasting your weakness to the entire galaxy? That was either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Knowing the Korthak, it was probably both. Any responses yet? Several pirate groups have acknowledged receipt but aren't offering assistance. 3 smaller planetary governments have expressed sympathy but lack the military capacity to help. The Void Syndicate has sent a trade proposal for their weapons stockpile, marked up 400%. Tala paused, checking her console again. And, sir, we've received a response from Earth. The bridge fell silent again. But this time the quality of silence was different. Where before it had been shocked concern, now it carried an undercurrent of primal fear. Earth. The name was whispered in hushed tones throughout the galaxy, usually followed by nervous laughter and claims that the stories couldn't possibly be true. They were just myths, exaggerations spread by traders looking to inflate the value of their human-made goods. But Vex-Nine had been around long enough to know that the most dangerous myths usually contained a grain of terrifying truth. What did they say? He asked, proud that his voice only trembled slightly. Tala consulted her display, her own hands shaking as she scrolled through the transmission. It's brief, sir. Very brief. The message simply reads, coordinates received, en route. Estimated arrival in 4 days, suggests civilian evacuation of combat zones, humans coming. The last 2 words hung in the air like a death sentence. Officer Kelt, who was young enough to still believe the stories about humans were exaggerated, let out a nervous laugh. Well, that's reassuring. The Death World species is coming to save the day. What could possibly go wrong? Vex-Nine turned to stare at the young officer with a mixture of pity and terror. Kelt, in my 47 cycles of service, I have seen wars that consumed entire sectors. I've witnessed the birth and death of stars. I've negotiated peace treaties with species so alien that communication required mathematical equations. He paused, his voice dropping to a whisper. But I have never, ever wanted to be anywhere near humans when they decide something needs to die. Sir, with respect, they're just another species, admittedly from a high-gravity world with dangerous predators, but... Vex-Nine's voice cut through the young officer's words like a plasma blade. Let me tell you about humans. 5 cycles ago, a human trading vessel was attacked by Nexus pirates. It's not their military, not their government. Just one trading ship with a civilian crew of 12. The pirates captured the ship, killed 11 crew members, and took 1 prisoner. The bridge crew listened intently, even those who'd heard variations of this story before. The human government's response was proportionate. They sent exactly 1 ship. A small patrol craft with a crew of 30. Within 2 months, the entire Nexus Pirate Confederation had been dismantled, not defeated. Not scattered. Completely eliminated. 3,000 pirates across 47 bases in 16 systems. Gone. Kelt's confident expression was starting to waver. But sir, that was pirates. This is a military invasion by an advanced species that destroyed the Crystal Alliance in 18 hours. Vex-Nine stood and walked to the main display, staring at the tactical readouts from the Korthak distress call. The data painted a picture of systematic, ruthless efficiency. The invaders struck fast, adapted quickly, and left nothing behind but empty space. You want to know what makes humans truly terrifying, Kelt? It's not their strength or their technology or even their famous stubbornness. It's the fact that they see every conflict as personal. When those pirates killed 11 humans, it wasn't an attack on a trading vessel. It was an attack on their family. And humans, Kelt, have a very simple policy when it comes to threats against their family. What policy, sir? Vex-Nine turned back to face his crew, his expression grim. Total war. Not strategic war. Not political war. Not even survival war. Total war. They will burn down the galaxy before they let their enemies win. The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. Somewhere out there, an unknown species was consuming civilizations at an unprecedented rate. And now, humanity's military was en route to stop them. Sir, Communications Officer Tala spoke up hesitantly, Should we warn the Korthak Empire about what they've unleashed? Vex-Nine considered this for a long moment. The Korthak had called for help, and help was coming. The fact that their salvation might be more terrifying than their problem was, technically, not his concern. No, he said finally. They asked for assistance. They're about to receive it. Whether they survive the assistance is up to them. As if summoned by his words, another transmission appeared on the communications array. This one wasn't from the Korthak Empire or any council member. The origin signature identified it as originating from Earth's solar system, specifically from something called the Terran Defense Coordination Center. "Sir, we're receiving a general broadcast from Earth," Tala announced, her voice barely steady. "It's being transmitted on all frequencies to every known civilization in the galaxy. Play it." The holographic display activated, revealing a human in what appeared to be military attire. Unlike the desperate, panicked transmission from Zorth, this human seemed almost relaxed. He sat behind a simple desk in what looked like a utilitarian office, his expression calm and professional. "This is Admiral Marcus Webb of the Terran Defense Force," the human began, his voice carrying an undertone that somehow managed to be both reassuring and absolutely terrifying. "We have received multiple distress calls regarding an invasion of unknown hostiles in the Outer Rim sectors, effective immediately. All human military assets are being deployed to address this situation." Webb paused, consulting a tablet on his desk with casual efficiency. "To any species currently engaged in hostilities with the invading force, maintain defensive positions and avoid unnecessary casualties. We will coordinate with your military leadership upon arrival. To any species considering opportunistic actions against weakened neighbors during this crisis, don't. To the invading force currently consuming inhabited systems." The human looked directly into the camera, and even through the holographic display, Vex-Nine felt a chill run down his spine. "You have 48 hours to cease all hostile actions and withdraw from occupied territories. This is your only warning. Failure to comply will result in the full deployment of human military doctrine. You will not enjoy the experience." The transmission ended as abruptly as it had begun. Harold, who had grown increasingly pale during the broadcast, finally found his voice. "Sir, they gave the invaders a warning. That's diplomatic. Maybe the stories about humans are exaggerated after all." Vex-Nine stared at the empty holographic display where the human admiral had been moments before. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of someone who had seen too much of the galaxy's dark corners. "Kelt, when humans give you a warning, they're not being diplomatic. They're being merciful. The difference is that their mercy looks exactly like everyone else's threats." As if to punctuate his words, long-range sensors began detecting massive gravitational distortions at the edge of Council space. Something very large was moving through hyperspace at unprecedented speeds. The humans were coming. And somewhere in the Outer Rim, an unknown invading force was about to learn why the rest of the galaxy whispered Earth's name in the dark. 3 days later, Captain Vex-Nine stood on the observation deck of his ship, watching something that defied every tactical manual ever written. Through the reinforced viewport, human vessels moved through space with a precision that bordered on the supernatural. "Sir," Officer Kelt's voice came through the comm system, noticeably less cocky than it had been 72 hours ago. "The human fleet has established a perimeter around the Korthak system. They're requesting permission to broadcast tactical communications through our relay network." Vex-Nine activated his communicator without taking his eyes off the human formations. "Granted. And Kelt? Start recording everything. The Galactic Council is going to want a detailed report on this. What he was witnessing would reshape military doctrine across the galaxy." The human fleet consisted of only 47 vessels, a laughably small force compared to the thousands of ships the invaders had already destroyed. But these weren't ordinary warships. Each human vessel moved with impossible coordination, as if controlled by a single mind. They established overlapping fields of fire, created supply lines that seemed to materialize from empty space, and positioned themselves with mathematical precision that suggested they could predict enemy movements before they happened. "Sir," Tala's voice crackled through the comm. We're receiving the human tactical frequency. Admiral Webb is addressing his fleet. Put it on speakers. Base. Admiral Webb's voice filled the observation deck, calm and methodical despite the fact that he was about to engage an enemy that had crushed every force sent against it. All units, this is Admiral Webb. Intelligence analysis confirms the hostiles follow a predictable expansion pattern. They consume a system's resources to fuel their next attack, which means they've committed the majority of their forces to occupied territories. Current deployment shows approximately 60% of their fleet engaged in resource extraction, 30% in forward assault positions, and 10% in reserve. Vex-Nine felt his jaw drop. The humans had been in system for less than 6 hours, and they already had detailed intelligence on enemy force distribution. Intelligence that had taken the Korthak Empire weeks to gather, and even then incompletely. Phase 1 objectives are as follows. Webb continued. Strike Group Alpha will eliminate extraction operations in Systems 4 through 7. Strike Group Beta will engage forward assault elements while they're separated from support. Strike Group Gamma will conduct surgical strikes on command and control nodes identified through signal intercept. Kelt's voice came through the comm. Barely a whisper. Sir, they're not just planning to fight these invaders, they're planning to fight them everywhere at once. Webb's briefing continued with terrifying efficiency. Rules of engagement are as follows. Any hostile vessel that attempts to withdraw will be allowed to leave unharmed, provided they maintain course away from inhabited systems. Any hostile vessel that attempts to regroup with invasion forces will be destroyed. Any hostile vessel that targets civilian populations will result in complete elimination of all hostile forces in that system. The communication ended, and the human fleet began to move. What happened next would be studied in military academies for centuries. The humans didn't charge forward in a glorious assault. They didn't establish defensive positions and wait for the enemy to come to them. Instead, they simply vanished. Tala, where did they go? Vex-Nine demanded, staring at sensor displays that showed empty space where the human fleet had been moments before. Sir, I'm reading gravitational distortions consistent with micro-jumps, but the calculations don't make sense. They're jumping distances of less than 1 light minute. That should be impossible with standard hyperspace drives. Before Vex-Nine could respond, his sensors lit up with weapons fire from 6 different systems simultaneously. The humans had somehow coordinated instantaneous attacks across impossible distances, striking the invading fleet at precisely the moment when their forces were most vulnerable. Sir, we're receiving transmissions from the combat zones, Kelt announced, his voice filled with awe. The humans are broadcasting their engagement reports in real time. Let's hear it. Gaia, Strike Group Alpha reporting successful elimination of extraction fleet in System 4. 17 hostile vessels destroyed, 0 human casualties, moving to secondary objectives. Like Karen. Alakoro, Strike Group Beta engaged forward assault elements in System 6. Hostile fleet attempting to regroup. Negative, hostile fleet neutralized. 23 vessels destroyed. Minimal damage to human forces. Strike Group Gamma has located primary command vessel, initiating boarding procedures. Vex-Nine's head snapped up. Boarding procedures? They're actually going aboard an enemy ship. The answer came minutes later in a transmission that would become legendary throughout the galaxy. This is Captain Sarah Mitchell of the TDF Retribution. We have successfully boarded the hostile command vessel. Initial resistance was significant. However, we have established contact with the enemy command structure. There was a pause, filled with the sound of what could only be described as controlled mayhem in the background. Admiral Webb, you need to hear this. The hostiles are not invaders. They're refugees. The statement hit the gathered aliens like a plasma blast. Refugees? The unstoppable force that had consumed entire civilizations were refugees. Admiral Webb's voice came through the comm, still calm but with an edge of curiosity. Explain, Captain. Borchu, sir. According to their commander, they're fleeing something called the Devourers. Apparently, their entire galaxy was consumed by some kind of synthetic intelligence that converts organic matter into computational substrate. They've been running for over 2,000 years, consuming resources from other species because they literally have no choice. It's either take what they need to keep running or stop and get absorbed by the Devourers. The implications hit everyone simultaneously. These weren't conquerors. They were survivors doing whatever it took to stay ahead of something even worse. Webb's response was immediate and decisive. Captain Mitchell, secure the enemy commander and prepare for extraction. All strike groups, cease offensive operations. Repeat, cease offensive operations. Switch to containment protocols. Sir, came a confused voice from one of the strike group leaders. Containment protocols for refugees? Negative. Containment protocols for the things chasing them. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity that showcased exactly why humans were feared throughout the galaxy. While other species might have spent weeks debating the political and ethical implications of the situation, the humans simply adapted their entire strategy in real time. Within 6 hours, human engineers were working alongside the refugees to repair their damaged vessels. Human tacticians were analyzing the threat profile of the pursuing Devourers, and human diplomats were negotiating settlement rights for the refugees in unpopulated systems far from established trade routes. Sir, Tala reported, Admiral Webb is requesting a meeting with all Galactic Council representatives in the system. 20 minutes later, Vex-Nine found himself in a conference room aboard the human flagship, surrounded by technology that seemed to anticipate his needs before he knew he had them. Admiral Webb sat across from him, flanked by the refugee commander, a being that looked like a cross between a spider and a starfish. Captain Vex-Nine. Webb began without preamble. We have a problem. According to Commander Thix here, the Devourers are approximately 18 months behind their refugee fleet. They follow a simple protocol: consume everything, convert everything, move on, based on their expansion rate and current trajectory. They'll reach Galactic Council space in approximately 27 months. Vex-Nine felt his stomach drop. How many of them are there? Commander Thix's translator rendered its response in a voice that somehow conveyed absolute despair. When we fled our galaxy, they controlled approximately 40% of all matter and energy within it. That was 2,000 years ago. They do not stop growing. Webb leaned forward, his expression serious but not panicked. However, we believe we have a solution. The refugees have been fighting a running battle for 2 millennia. They've learned things about the Devourers that no one else knows. Weaknesses. Tactical limitations. Most importantly, they know that the Devourers have never encountered a coordinated defense. Coordinated defense? Vex-Nine asked. Every species the Devourers have consumed fought alone. They would arrive at a galaxy, and each civilization would try to defend itself individually. What they've never faced is a galaxy-wide military alliance specifically designed to counter their tactics. Vex-Nine stared at the human admiral. You're proposing to militarize the entire galaxy? No, Webb corrected. I'm proposing to save it. The Devourers operate on the assumption that organic species are inherently chaotic and unable to coordinate on the scale necessary to mount an effective defense. They've been right for over 50,000 years of expansion across multiple galaxies. Webb stood and activated a holographic display showing the galaxy's political boundaries. But they've never encountered humans before. And humans have a talent for convincing other species to work together when the alternative is extinction. Over the next several hours, Admiral Webb outlined the most audacious military plan in galactic history. The refugee fleet would be integrated into existing defense forces, providing intelligence and tactical expertise. Human military doctrine would be shared with every species willing to learn it. Most importantly, the galaxy's industrial capacity would be unified under a single command structure designed to outproduce and outmaneuver an enemy that had consumed hundreds of civilizations. This is insane, Vex-Nine finally said. You're talking about unifying thousands of species, millions of worlds, trillions of individuals under a single military command. The logistics alone are complicated but manageable, Webb finished. Captain, humans have been preparing for this kind of threat since we first left our home system. Every human military officer studies something we call the Great Filter Theory. The idea that somewhere in the development of every species, they encounter a challenge that either destroys them or transforms them into something capable of surviving anything the universe can throw at them. Webb gestured to the refugee commander. Commander Thix's people encountered their great filter and chose survival over everything else. They became nomads, consuming other civilizations to fuel their flight. The Devourers encountered their great filter and chose unity over individuality, becoming a collective intelligence that prioritizes efficiency over existence. The Admiral turned back to Vex-Nine. Humanity encountered our great filter 300 years ago. When we nearly destroyed ourselves in a global war, we chose cooperation over domination. We learned that the only way to survive an existential threat is to make sure that threat faces something it's never encountered before. Vex-Nine looked around the room, at the human officers calmly discussing logistics for a galactic war, at the refugee commander sharing intelligence about an enemy that had destroyed its entire civilization, at the holographic displays showing supply chains and communication networks that spanned thousands of light years. And what makes you think the other species will agree to this alliance? Admiral Webb smiled, and for the first time since meeting him, Vex-Nine understood why humans were feared throughout the galaxy. It wasn't because they were violent or unpredictable. It was because they were absolutely, terrifyingly reasonable. Because, Captain, we're going to give them a choice. They can join our alliance and help us build something capable of stopping the Devourers, or they can wait 18 months and find out what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. Webb stood and moved to the viewport, staring out at the stars where the greatest threat in galactic history was slowly making its way toward them. And Captain, when that happens, I guarantee you that the Devourers are going to discover something that no artificial intelligence has ever had to deal with before. What's that, Admiral? Webb turned back to face the room, his expression carrying the weight of a species that had stared into the abyss and decided to fight back. Humans who are really, truly angry. 6 months later, as Vex-Nine watched the first joint training exercises between human, Korthak, and refugee forces, he realized that the galaxy would never be the same. The Devourers were coming, but they were going to find something waiting for them that they had never encountered in 50,000 years of conquest. A united galaxy that refused to die quietly. And leading that galaxy were the humans, who had turned a desperate alien distress call into the foundation of the greatest military alliance in galactic history. The most dangerous force in the galaxy, it turned out, wasn't their weapons or their tactics or even their infamous stubbornness. It was their absolute refusal to let anyone face extinction alone.